Here we are at Oscail Coedog with another 3D printer ready to build. It's been kindly donated for the production of PPE. So the first thing we need to do is to peel the protective film off all the plastic components before we can even begin the assembly. We've now been doing this half an hour. We haven't even started building yet. So it's just been over an hour now since we started, and we're starting to put the frame loosely together. And now we put on the top pieces. So now it's time to put the back mount on, but just before we do that, we need to put on the mount for the Y-axis motor, which is the one that makes the bed of the 3D printer go forward and back. And now we put on the motor itself. And now, with the motor in place, we put the back piece on. So the next step is to put in the Z motors, for which we need first of all to put in the Z motor stepper housings. And so now, with the Z motor inside the Z motor housing, we mount it all to the frame. And then we do the same for the second Z motor on the other side of the frame. So before we complete the frame, we attach the guide to the front piece, and the guide is what the belt goes through. So now we complete the frame. We have to be very careful to make sure that everything is perfectly lined up. Otherwise, we will have issues later on in the process when we actually start printing. So next, before we tighten up the frame, we just have to install the bearings for the bed of the printer, making sure first of all that they are well lubricated. So we spent about half an hour squaring the entire frame up, and have now attached the frame for the bed, and as you can see, although it's smoothly going back and forth, the time was well spent. Now that the bed frame is on, we can see about attaching the belt that will be responsible for making the printer bed go forward and backwards. And the belt is now on. And so now we have mounting the X motor, which is what moves the print head left and right. Next thing we do is add the carriage that moves the print head up and down and left and right. So before we attach the print head, we have a couple of other things to attach first, starting with the fan. Secondly, we have the X limit micro switch. Now the print head is assembled, we can now attach it to the rest of the printer. So now we have the two switches in place. It's time now to attach the belt to the X axis. And the belt is now attached. The next thing to put on is the bed of the 3D printer, which is a heated bed. Before we attach the power supply to the printer, we first have to connect a few wires. Next thing to do is to attach the brain to the 3D printer, which is essentially a small computer. If you want to see what we're doing when we're using the 3D printer, the next thing we install are the controls on the screen. Next we're connecting up the bed, a Z motor, the other Z motor, and the Y motor. And the X motor. And finally we need to connect up the extruder. Finally we need to connect it all up to the motherboard. Here it is, the finished product